Hi there, this is Miss Johnson, and this is a very short video to show you how to set the parameters for a normal, for the blank document in Word, which is based off the normal template. So the first thing I'm going to do is open Word, and you'll notice that one of the options is to click a blank template. Now that blank template is based on something called the normal.dot. That's a template. There's always going to be a normal.dot in Word. It's what all documents are based on as far as the formatting goes. It can be changed. You can change it document by document, or you can set a global normal .dot, which is used for every document that's open. So the way that you can see what the parameters are, if you'll notice, we're under the Home tab here, and I'm going to be focusing here on the paragraph grouping. The Show Hide feature is on. That allows us to be able to see the hidden characters such as the paragraph symbols, tab symbols, spacebar symbols. So all these are considered hidden characters. If you turn the Show Hide feature off, you don't see them. If you turn it on, you do see them. When you're in a document production course, it's extremely important to keep them on because you need to be able to see when you have clicked the spacebar too many times or when you've hit one too many enter keys, because SAM, the program that you're using to do your coursework, is going to count it as an error if you have a keystroke that has not been specifically instructed to type. So let's say at the end of your document you have a few of these paragraph symbols. You're going to need to delete those. SAM is going to consider those to be keystrokes, and they're going to be errors if they were not called for specifically. At the end of a sentence or a paragraph, if you have too many spacebar entries, those, even though you can't see them when your Show Hide feature is turned off, they will be considered to be keystroke errors. So best to know what you've got. At least turn it on once or twice while you're typing, or maybe at the end to do a double check, because you don't want to get unnecessary errors just for careless mistakes. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of all these because they're not really important. But let's go here. This is the paragraph grouping, and I'm going to expand this to open up the dialog box. What we're going to see in here are all of the parameters that make up this document's formatting. Starting up here in the indents and spacing, the alignment is set for left, which means when we click into this document, we're going to the left margin. It'll automatically default to the left margin. Keep the outline level as body text. For indentation, you don't want any indentation unless you need to set it specifically for a document. You don't want it to be any specific indentation to be applied to the normal document, like that global document that's going to be used every single time you open up a Word document. So you want it to stay with 0 and 0 and have no special indentation. For the spacing, this is where it gets interesting. So when we look at the spacing section, on the left side, we're dealing with paragraph spacing. Before means space before a paragraph starts. After is after the paragraph ends. Multiple 1.08 on the right side here, this applies to line spacing. So I'm going to use this preview down here at the bottom as a little bit of an example. So notice that we're going to look at line spacing first. Notice that these lines are all within a paragraph, and there's a space between each of the lines. This represents that space. So multiple 1.08, 1 is always going to refer to the size of the font that's being used for the text. So this font we're going to assume is 11 points. It's 11-point font, right? So the space between these sentences is 11. We know that because of the 1, but it's more than 11. It's 1.08, so it's 11.08, almost 12 points, which is why you see that the lines, if you're looking carefully, the space between these lines is ever so slightly larger than the actual size of the text on the line. So that's multiple 1.08. It doesn't have to be 1.08. You can set it for something else. You can set it. Microsoft has a couple of standard um, line spacing that have been issued with their versions of Word. Multiple 1.08 is one of them. Multiple 1.15 is another. Either is fine. When we go to the left side and we're talking about space before and after a paragraph, what that means is if I click in to this document and start typing, Word is not going to force any space above that paragraph so that there's space above the paragraph and whatever was before the paragraph, because it says 0. If there was a number here, it would force that much space between wherever the paragraph starts and whatever is above that paragraph. Same thing with after. It's after the paragraph. So notice in this sample here below, we talked about the fact that we have a certain amount of space in the lines between each of these sentences. Notice that the space between the paragraphs, so this is the end of this paragraph and this is the beginning of a new paragraph, this space between the paragraphs is larger than the space between the sentences. That's by design. It's going to be 8 points between each paragraph, but not just 8 points. It's 8 points plus whatever the size of the font. So we're dealing here with 11 font. So we know that the space between the paragraphs is going to be 11 plus 8. So we know that there's going to be 19 points between every paragraph. I hope that makes sense. You can set these parameters, and then if you want to make them as your global template settings, meaning that every time you open a document, it's going to have these settings, then you would click the Set as Default. Let me show you something. So when we opened up this blank document, these were our parameters. If I decided that I didn't like 1.08 and I really wanted the 1.15 and I didn't want 8 points after each paragraph, I wanted 10 instead, I could set it as the default, and I would be asked a question before I do it. The question is, do you want to apply these changes to this document that we're working in, or do you want it to apply to all documents from this point forward? So if I wanted it to be a global template, all documents, then I would click OK. And then note that when I open a new document and I go to the paragraph settings, notice that they will have been changed now. Every single document I open that's called a blank document in Word from this point forward will have these parameters. I'm going to change it back because I personally prefer the 1.08 with 8 points after. It's just a preference. Notice that I typed 8 points here. You need a space between the 8 and the PT, or it's going to calculate something completely different than you think. So at this point I will set it as a default because I like these parameters, and now every document that I open will have these parameters, and you'll see it. That's how you set a default for your template. All right, I hope that's helpful to you. Thank you so much.